Hey everyone, so Evil Empire, the devs behind Dead Cells, one of the greatest action platformers of all time, just released their new game, The Rogue Prince of Persia. It has many of the same elements as Dead Cells, but it's still in early access. Now early access games to me are very 50-50, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But what side does The Rogue Prince of Persia fall on? Well, that's what this video is all about. Now the game isn't perfect, but some of the mechanics and features included really make this game stand out, and that's something I'll be discussing here. Now the Rogue Prince of Persia brings many new tricks to the table, but are there enough to prove Evil Empire has what it takes to carry on that Prince of Persia legacy? Well, this is Marco here from Easily Distracted Games, helping you find new or old games for you to get lost in. So let's get started with today's new video. So calling the Rogue Prince of Persia a Dead Cells DLC or mod would be doing this game a really great disservice here. Yes, they may look similar, but there are some noticeable differences too. Yes, you have the similarities of the roguelike game that include the procedurally generated maps, the complex game mechanics, the permadeath, and of course that meta progression, and you still get the chance to pick up weapons and abilities and teleport across the map, just like in Dead Cells. But the differences really stand out, especially in the form of that parkour element, where you'll be traversing across the map and enemies in speed and succession, and it's really fluid. And because it's from the devs that brought you Dead Cells, the gameplay overall is just so clean and fluid too. But because it's still in early access, it might not be for everyone. So I still enjoyed it, and I'll give you my thoughts later in the video. But if you're enjoying these videos and want to find the next game for you to get lost in, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. You could be the 500th subscriber, or leave a comment for what game I should review next. So in terms of the storyline, it's very bare bones at the moment. You are the Prince of Persia, and the Huns aren't too happy with what you've done and are planning to invade in the next 3 days. So essentially you are trying to save Persia from this Hun invasion, which was the result of your own actions that you don't know what you've done yet. But it's a bit like It's Always Sunny, where you have this mind map of everything and you're trying to unlock clues, and those get unlocked the more you play the game. So it's a pretty cool element. And because it's a roguelite and you have this whole Prince of Persia vibe, you have this magical bowler. So whenever you die, you come back to life, or you just go back in time to 3 days before. Think of like, say, Groundhog Day or 51st Dates, except you're going to be replacing Adam Sandler with a Persian prince. So before the fighting and the combat begins, I want to discuss some of those interesting parkour mechanics. Parkour. Now, these devs obviously helped to create Dead Cells, a game well known for its traversal mechanics. And in this game, it's no different, and I love that they're using something new here. In the Rogue Prince of Persia, you get a standard run in vaults, but that vault can also be used to jump over enemies, useful when trying to escape or even launch special abilities. Then there's that wall running and climbing mechanic, which to me really set this game apart. It allows you to scale walls, not just like up and down, but diagonally sometimes, and you can kind of choose where you want to go down when you're scaling down. It's a really neat feature, and when you combine it with everything else in terms of the combat, it just looks like you're going through the stage with ease, and it starts looking like you're just watching an animation or a cartoon. It's amazing. It's very different to Dead Cells, and it's a very unique concept, and it adds this extra dimension. You never know if you can always do it. You have to look at the wall behind you and say, okay, can I go up here? And sometimes you can't, and like in the boss battles, and it's really scary sometimes. So it just adds a new element to the game that I really appreciate here. Looking at the combat, it's extremely solid too. You're equipped with a starting melee and range weapon, which are these double daggers and this bow respectively, but then during your run you can still find new weapons or upgrade the ones that you currently have. You also get to do those falling attacks, same with Dead Cells, but then you also get to kick enemies, like 300 Spartan style, and I never get tired of that. Honestly, one of my favorite mechanics. You can either kick people into spikes or just over ledges, which I think I did more times than I care to admit. But then you also need to not forget about those abilities that you can pick up along the way. These come in the form of augmenting the attacks that you can already perform. So for instance, dropping this oil slick on the floor when you kick someone, or say poisoning enemies when you're shooting them from afar. You only get 4 slots to put these abilities in though, so you always need to be making sure what kind of playstyle you want. And yes, even though these abilities are cool, they sometimes feel a bit samey. They got the poison which kind of kills them, and the fire that kind of kills them, so hoping for more of those to be coming out soon. But you can unlock these in the base, which I'll get to. But overall the combat is fluid. and it's best expressed when you're combining all these attacks together. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You get these chests in the level and also these sacrificial ones too that you can use to unlock new weapons and new abilities. There are some puzzles in the game. I wasn't the biggest fan of them. Essentially, it was just moving levers back and forth, so hopefully they get some bit more technicality added in later on. I think the hardest part for me, honestly, was traversing sometimes. Those were just a puzzle in itself, trying to get those right, and it felt really good when I did. Which, if I look back at the difficulty-wise, it is fairly easy during the levels, but damn, that first boss really got me good. I think that's why it took so long for me to do this review, honestly. It took me quite a few attempts, like longer than I care to admit, but overall the enemies were pretty straightforward. Once you kind of learn their attack patterns, it becomes a lot easier to manage. They are a bit dull, especially the early game enemy types. They're all kind of samey. Again, this is early access, so you can't really hope for much here. So hopefully some variations or some elite types get added in later on. But for me, honestly, I think the bosses really stood out here. Especially that first one, damn, he got me good. And I think the second one even better because he makes use of that traversal element that obviously makes the game stand out. I think the level design is really good. I see where they're going, but I don't know, after playing Dead Cells, this does feel very bare bones, so hopefully they'll be adding in more here too. So looking at the visuals, there's a lot of vibrancy, a lot of color here. The levels really stand out, you always know which one you're on. The character animations and designs, I think they're really fluid, but at the same time, both the character designs as well as the levels are going to be added on. It feels a bit bare boned right now. Things are very straightforward. There are a lot of placeholders, and again, hopefully these are going to be added to as the months go by. And I'm just going to say this game kind of reminds me of the old Lion King and Aladdin games, which I don't think is a bad thing. It was really nostalgic for me, especially when jumping across like that. But for me, one of the best parts in this game is easily the soundtrack, next to, say, the traversal and jumping around. At first I was like, what? Are they just trying to like jump on board with this new trap style of electro beats here? But no, it actually works here. There are so many good tracks that I haven't felt this urge to check out the soundtrack since maybe Hi-Fi Rush or, dare I say it, Hotline Miami. And I'd say something else to really enhance this game's experience is to definitely listen to it with some headphones or some speakers that have got some really decent bass, because damn, some of these just go so hard, and with that extra bass, you can really feel that they've put a lot of effort into the soundtrack here. All the songs, even if you're not a fan of that style, really go hard, and I love that they've blended in all the beats with this Middle Eastern instruments. It just really adds to the overall setting. So to me, the soundtrack, 100% really enjoyed it. Performance-wise, well, I mean, you judging by the look of this 2D environment and characters, it won't be setting your computer on fire anytime soon. But again, because it's still in early access, you will be noticing some frame drops and some lag every now and again, especially during those scenes where you're moving from one level to the next, or when you die and go back to base. It really irked me, and I really hope that those get fixed soon. There are some weird animations here and there, but again, nothing too serious, and hopefully within the next 1 or 2 updates, they will be smoothing all of that out. Then on to the pros and cons here. I'd say definitely the pros are the wall running and the parkour mechanics here. So smooth, so dynamic, and once you get it right, damn, it's so satisfying. Another thing that's satisfying to me is kicking people off the edges. It's definitely the best part, and again, so satisfying. And then we're going to be looking at the visuals and sound. It might not appeal to everyone, these visuals, but I really like them. They're really different. And then obviously that soundtrack, it's epic. It really goes hard. Some banging tracks right there. But then when we're looking on the cons, you will be noticing that it misses a lot of content, and it's a lot of different placeholders that obviously need to be filled in soon. It did make the game feel a bit empty. Again, I wasn't a fan of that. And the game's pretty short too. It's got 2 bosses. That's essentially it. You're going to be playing the game, finishing it around 5 to 8 hours, depending on what you're trying to do. Obviously, if you want to be unlocking everything, it might take a bit longer. And there wasn't a lot of time stuff either. It's Prince of Persia. He's all about that time, and this game doesn't really add a lot of that. Yes, you die and come back to base kind of thing, but that's essentially it. So hopefully more time elements and abilities get added in later in future updates. So naturally this game will be compared to Dead Cells. I actually booted up Dead Cells recently just to do a quick comparison, and yeah, they're very similar, but Dead Cells obviously has more polish. It's been out for a lot longer, and I think if you're a fan of Dead Cells and want to find your next game here similar to it, I think give this game a pause for now. Maybe try out Hades 2 or even Ants Took My Eyeball, which I played way back and it's a hidden gem. Honestly, it's highly recommended. But the Rogue Prince of Persia has a playtime for about 4 to 8 hours and it costs $20. So because of all of this, it begs the question, who is this game actually for? I mean, it's a $20 game, it doesn't have a lot going on for it, so why get it? Well, to me, it would be for someone who's very passionate about roguelites and the gaming and the genre, especially they love and support Evil Empire, and that's who it's for. It's for someone who wants to give some feedback, wants to say, hey, here are some differences, maybe have some suggestions, and see how the game progresses. Maybe jump in the Discord and add some feedback there. That's who I'd say this is for. For someone wanting the next best roguelike, this is not for you. So for me, it's not something I recommend right now. It's not really a full game yet. With the 2 bosses and a few hours, you're done. You're like, okay, what's next? But it's a work in progress. I got the gist of it and I might be returning for its full release. But there is still potential here, as most of those core elements are done really well. I mean, the traversal and the fighting, it's really top notch here. So if Dead Cells 2 isn't coming out anytime soon, this will need to fill the gap for now. Evil Empire to me are one of the top dogs in the roguelite 2D space, so I definitely recommend keeping your eye on this. So thank you very much everyone for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a like or subscribe if you haven't to find more great games for you to get lost in. But other than that, this is Marco here from Easily Distracted Games, and most of all, don't stop gaming.